It's easy when you're in Cuba to be like, oh, I don't need all this stuff. Like, look, nobody has it. It's easy when you're on a bike ride and you see that, oh my gosh, I have two and you have none. Like, let me be generous. But it's hard when it's like everyone has more than you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. It will literally save you time and money. Welcome, friends. So excited for today's episode with my new friend, award-winning Christian artist, Evan Kraft. We sit down today to talk about his faith, his purpose, what truly matters beyond success, and his latest book, The Extra Mile. Evan opens up about his journey from chasing achievements to discovering the emptiness of accomplishment without obedience to God. He then shares how serving others and forgiving quickly, building a trusted team, it's shaped his leadership and his spiritual maturity. We talk about interruptions, detours, holy disruptions, all the things that God uses to redirect our lives. You're going to love this conversation with Evan. He's an incredible storyteller, and his journey on a bike changed his life. I know you're going to love it. And hey, be sure to stay all the way to the end for the 3 and 5, 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. Also, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to sign up for our email list. There's a link in the show notes, but we have some exciting things planned for 2026. You're going to want to make sure that you sign up for the email list so that you can get some PDFs. They're going to come out. In the middle of December and start one per month, a new PDF per month for next year's podcast episodes. We're planning something big. I know you're going to be excited about it. All right. Enough yapping for me. Here's a quick word from our partners and then my conversation with Evan Kraft. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have artist and author Evan Kraft. Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I love to start from the macro. You have done a lot of things, and we're going to jump into some of those uncomfortable things in just a minute. But how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
That is a great question. I think first and foremost, it is to constantly be obedient and seek out where he is leading me. And so sometimes it's been straight to Latin America, and sometimes it's been in my hometown or where I live. And so it's being sensitive to what God is leading you to at that moment, which means loving your neighbor as yourself, looking for opportunities to be a light in your community, and seeking his will over everything.
So one of the things I'm always curious about when I hear that kind of response, which I love, is how do you discern if you're in alignment with God's will? Especially because you have a lot of options, right? There's always yeses that are coming at you. There's always opportunities. How do you know when you're like, I'm in God's will, or like, I'm a disaster?
You know, I had an opportunity today to go make money on a Sunday morning or sing at my church. I had already committed to my church. This is in November. I could tell them, hey, this is my job. I need to go do this. But I decided I didn't pray about it. I didn't there wasn't like this, writing on the wall. I just decided not to take the concert or the event. And it's because one, I'm going to let my yes be yes and my no be no. But 2, I don't at this moment need that money. Like, I have a bunch of other events and this would be great. I would love it. It'd buy some more Christmas presents or whatever. But I think, I know the value of being in community and serving in my local church instead of going somewhere else. And so I think that, sometimes you have to look at, there are things like that where it's kind of like, I know the right answer. I know that if I would just be saying this because I want to get something out of it. The other one, when I was 18, I got offered 2 jobs at 2 different churches, and I fasted and prayed, and I felt like if I don't make the right decision, this can determine my whole life. And I realized afterwards, I was like, it was a little arrogant to think that like God is not sovereign, and that my decision making, that like I wasn't, doing something out of selfishness. I was doing something because I really wanted to serve the Lord. And so if I was going to serve Jesus here or here, I was going to be serving Jesus. And that, I mean, to answer your first question, that is what I'm called to.
Yeah.
Whether I'm here or somewhere else. So I think that, we can, at least like me, I can question myself and doubt my decisions when God is sovereign, that he orders my steps. His word is a light unto my feet. And so I've always loved that metaphor and that image, because they didn't have these like huge flashlights that could like light up a forest, right? It was like, hey, you have a candle. You have very little light. You can
Very
see
dim.
enough
Yeah, super dim. Yeah.
trip. And so, what I was saying about like, being obedient is that when God calls you to something, it is an act of faith to keep walking while you cannot see the entire path.
So I want to jump into a little bit of your story, and we'll kind of move in and out of it. August 17th, 2017, you admitted this to yourself. You write, "I'm achieving everything that I ever wanted to accomplish, and it's not nearly enough." Take us behind the scenes of that moment, standing in front of 80,000 people, when you realized that you're not happy.
Yeah, this is a constant battle in my life, because I don't think that. I think Tony Robbins, I was listening to a podcast, and he was talking to people, and like, whatever you were aiming for, when you achieved it, for how long were you happy? And, he goes, you might be maybe 6 weeks, maybe 6 days, maybe 6 seconds. And so I think that if our goal is to achieve something, that is great. But there is something about building, and something about like the process of following Jesus, the journey which leads you to help other people and to be constantly doing something that I think one of my biggest fears in my life is to retire. Is like, I heard a sermon actually from VU Church years ago it kind of gave a context of what retirement is, and that it was like created in Germany. Like, hey, this is like, people usually live to like 70 years. So we're going to retire them at 65. So you have 5 years to relax, and you probably like won't be able to do very much. And then you're gone. And today people are living to 80, 90 plus years. And so you retire at 65, and that's like, I'm only 34 years old. So if I retired at 65 and I live to be 100, let's say, that I'm only a third of the way there right now, but I'm barely 2/3 at 65, at 66, right? So what do I do with the rest of my time? I mean, that's like, to just not have a goal, to be kind of floating aimlessly. That's not what human beings were made for. Right. And so I think that, Paul didn't say like, hey, pick up your cross daily until you retire and then just lay it on the floor while you hang out. Right. Like, I think there's something very important about, like, he talks about the like running the race, fighting the good fight. And so when you standing in front of so many people, realizing like, if this was my aim, it's extremely empty. And so this cannot be the pinnacle at 25 years old, because if it is, I'm going to have a long way to fall for a long time. And that was the moment where I was like, I really need to find out on a deeper level what God has called me to, rather than just like, hey, this is this fun, like pop star, Christian, Spanish music, traveling the world. Like there's something deeper that God is calling me to. And that was the moment that I really knew I had to find it.
Yeah, what's interesting is most people don't decide to go on a 1,000-mile bike ride to find those things. And so tell us about the story.
You're smart.
Tell us about that story and your friend Paul, and how his consistency in faith led you to say, maybe I should do that.
Yeah, so Paul Jung is one of my best friends. We talk almost every day. He rode his bike in college from Washington to New York.
That's insane.
And he raised money to build wells in Africa. And I was like, you know what? There's got to be easier ways to do that, right? And I was like, this is crazy. I would never do anything like that. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm like, Paul, I need to do this. And there's something, about exercise and being physical that releases some type of endorphin that is, 100% from God. He created our bodies and our chemistry. But the other part about it is what I was saying, is that having a purpose. And I was like, okay, what can I add on to these nights of worship? What can I know I could go do a tour across Argentina and Chile. That's not that wasn't really the question. It was, could I do it while I don't want to just be an entertainer. I don't want to just come into your town, lead worship, sayonara, see you later. I want to leave an impact. And so I thought this would be something that would really surprise people, that, hey, we're cycling in, we made a lot of noise, and we're doing this, and we're calling it Ciclovida, but it's the extra mile, la milla extra. We want to get your attention because we want to show young people that God will go to any length to get your attention and show you that he loves you. And so that was the heart behind it all. It had so much more when we ended up inviting Alice and Alex on the ride, which were Venezuelan Paralympic athletes that didn't have a right leg, either of them. And so it became something so much bigger that I could never have fathomed. But that is what is so powerful about taking a step of faith and choosing to serve. Because when you serve, my dad would always say that sin will take you further than you want to go, keep you there longer than you want to stay. And I don't know, this is a third thing. But God will also sometimes do that. Is it when you say yes, he has more in store for you than you can imagine, and it may require more of you. But as the opposite to sin is that it's not to hurt you; it is actually to bless you. And so, this incredible journey, which was brutal and grueling and difficult, it was also one of the highlights of my entire life. Because I was able to serve people and I was able to do something with my body that had, every day I could see that someone was coming to know Christ, somebody was being changed, whether or not it was, the masses or a friend. And so that's how it started, and it was incredible.
Obviously, your friend Paul was on board with this idea, but I have to imagine, in the world that you were living in, you're a wildly successful artist and everything's kind of working, right? You're paying the bills, probably plus some. It's probably fair to say there are people who are in your ecosystem that are dependent upon you. That's a lot to risk. I imagine there's a leader who's listening right now who might feel like God is calling them to take a risk, but the cost is also so great. How did you battle the voices of your inner circle that might have been saying, Evan, let's pump the brakes. Maybe we could just get you a counselor, right? There's got to be a safer option than risk losing everything,
It was the easiest thing in the world. They all quit. So they all quit. It was September-ish 2017 that we decided to do this. By December, they all quit. And I was like, God, I don't know what to do. And it was actually cycling that helped me. It was my counselor that I would pray when I was on the bike. And so, I think that there are people that go with you for a while and people that run with you your whole life. There are people that need to stay and there's other people that don't. And I loved my band. I still love those guys, but they moved on to different things. Some of them are touring with mainstream artists. Some of them are producing. One of them got married. It's I'm very happy for them, but I had to be obedient to what God was calling me to do. And so those guys were probably not the right guys to go on that ride. Yeah. The team that I recruited was Colombian. They were all from Medellin, Colombia, and they were todo terreno, so all terrain. They could go off-roading. They could go they never complained. They were just happy to be there. And before I was with All Americans, we're used to a certain lifestyle. We're
right. Bougie. We're bougie, right? Yeah, for sure.
Bougie. These guys, there was only one time where one of them was kind of the leader. One of my really good friends, Sebas, I wasn't in charge of the logistics. So he had to call Adrian, who's my manager, and he was like, "Hey, we need to get out of this Airbnb or whatever it was, because it was like bunk beds. They're like suitcases didn't even fit in there." And he's like, "That was the only time." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, for sure. Get another room or something so that like they fit in there." But that was the only time that they ever said anything, and everything else was just they were happy to serve the Lord in that capacity. And so, that's a really hard thing, because I had this expectation that these guys were going to be with me till I died. And, that's a very optimistic outlook in your 20s. Life's long. And I also realized it's not a bad thing for people to move on. That like, I would have leaders that would, they'd be like, "I'm going to keep an open hand with you." But then when I wanted to go do something else, they would get really frustrated and treat me poorly when I was in my early 20s. And I kind of realize now it's like that is hypocritical, and that is not having an open hand. An open hand is saying, "Hey, if you do not like this one, or you feel called somewhere else, go do it."
Yeah.
Like, God has always provided. I've always had a drummer. I've always had a guitar player. I've always had a keys player. And, like he is the maker of all things. He will provide. And so I think it's knowing that, because that's the one way as well to like maintain friendships that I haven't always done well. And I try to do extremely well at this point in my life.
How has that experience with your old band, new band, all the people that kind of around you now, how has it impacted the way that you surround yourself with people? Like, what's your hiring process look like now? Is there any kind of like qualities that you look for that you're like, are you willing to go 1,000 miles with me through South America? Right? Like, like what's the barometer?
I have a backup team. And so I have guys in the US, and they are like my main team. But there are places that I can't take them. And not that they wouldn't do it, but they have families.
Sure.
They have jobs. And it's, for us to go to the jungles of Peru, which like sometimes I have concerts. I've been to Pucallpa, Peru, which is the Amazon. And I've done worship nights. In order to get there, you have to fly to Lima, then you have to fly to Pucallpa. It is, for one event, it's a 3-4 day thing. To go to Argentina, it's a 3-4 day thing for one event. So when I go, I typically stay longer. And I brought my family last time. I go do other things. And so when these guys, they have a full-time job as well, it doesn't make sense. So I have a Colombian team as well, and they're great musicians, great people. Like, I mean, I wish I could just have a band of 8-9 people, but those are the guys that I know I can call on for this one's going to be a little more difficult.
Sure.
Like they're down. They're ready to go at a moment's notice. And so it's great to have those two, like my American team, they're some of my best friends. The Colombian team is newer, and my manager lives in Colombia, so he found these guys, but they are phenomenal people. And it's a privilege for me to be able to work with them, because they have a different perspective on ministry and what it means to go and do things in their cultures.
One of the interesting things about the work that you're doing is that it does seem to kind of straddle both worlds, the American world and the Latin American world. What have you learned about the global church living in both places?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned that God does not just move in the United States. And I really think it enriches people to go and see what he is doing in other places. I mean, one of the interesting things is just the way that like we refer to God. Like the word I don't speak Portuguese. I don't usually go to Brazil, but I have Brazilian friends and artists, and I've listened to a lot of the music, and they say pai. Pai is like dad, papa. And so when they're referring to father, it's not padre, which is the same word in Spanish as like, a Catholic priest, father. Pai is like, it's like dad. And so there's this connotation built into the language of God as a father.
Wow.
God is my dad. And so I think that's like one crazy thing about just learning another language, is that when you read the Bible, when you experience the culture, there's things that are implicit that you have to go and experience in order to really understand. I've been to Cuba, I've been to Venezuela. When I think of persecution, I think of pastors I know that have been put in jail.
Yeah.
For preaching the gospel, and they don't know why. And then, they'll be let out, but it's more like a power move to make sure that they stay obedient, that they don't speak out against the government. And so, it's a very different reality from what we live in. And, I've met people that are serving Christians in like Afghanistan and Iran. And I think of how blessed we are to live in the United States, but also like sometimes how detrimental it can be to like the strength of, and it's not that you cannot have a strong walk with Jesus here in the United States. I think what can happen is that the easiest way for the enemy to distract us is just with being busy. It's so hard for me to find time to read my Bible. I have 2 kids. I mean, you've
got a young baby, like on your Instagram. How that baby is like, how old as we record
like
this?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Like, it's still got that new car smell. Like, it was like, you're not sleeping at all, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I just aged 10 years this last year. But I mean, that's my daughter's, I have an almost 2-year-old who is, my mom has told me she's the karma. Like, she is the payback for how I was. I mean, she's a fantastic little girl.
Sure, of course.
She is like a spitfire, just like I'm a very emotional, like I live life pretty full, like
Same.
Full on. And so does my daughter. My newborn, I think even now, she's 5 weeks old, like we can kind of tell she's more chill. And so I'm like, she sleeps a lot more. She doesn't cry as much. And she's just like happy. And I'm like, I don't know what that's like.
Oh, that's great. This reminds me of one of the chapters of your book. In chapter 5, you titled it, I was fascinated by it, The Worst of Evancraft, right? And it is all about this idea of how you were getting disrupted and expectations and interruptions. And my audience, we call them the bold ones. And there are a lot of type A Christian executives and entrepreneurs who are living life full, like you and I both do. And I don't always see an openness to an interruptible life. Tell us about the day when you really couldn't get anywhere because everything was breaking down and everything was happening the way you didn't want it to, and what it taught you about the idea of surrendering when you really don't have any other choice.
Well, what I would say, especially to people who are type A, that they're go-getters and building something, is that sometimes that can become an idol. And it did for me on the first day of the bike ride. And I would say, like as well, like I am not good when I'm hungry. I am not good when I am tired. And thank the Lord, that's almost all the time. So, on the first day of the bike ride, we were supposed to leave at like 9 a.m. and we were supposed to do like a photo shoot before, like at the beach in Chile, and then start going towards Santiago. And it turned into like 10, 11, 12. And so I ate breakfast, but we started our 3-4 hour cycling day, or that's supposed to be 5 hours, right? At noon. And so we didn't eat lunch. And then we're 3 hours into the cycling, and Adrian was nowhere to be found, and he was in charge of food. So I'm calling him, and I'm just getting angry. I was, not only was I hungry, so I was not making clear decisions, I was also like embarrassed. I was like, I organized this trip, like this is on me, and there's 6 other cyclists, and I go, okay, well, like I need to take care of them. And they weren't complaining, but I felt this responsibility. And so I think for maybe some leaders, there's this expectation of like, this is how things should go. Things at church or things at my business should look this way. And when it's not executed well, I'm going to tear off someone's head. And it's like we see Jesus flipping over the tables, and we somehow think that we're the righteous ones flipping over tables, when it's actually, hey, no, like Jesus was pretty kind to the people that were in his circle. And he was, it was these money changers and people that were defiling the house of God. No one was defiling the house of God on my bike ride. Like, and so I grew up with my dad was pretty intense when I was a kid, and I talk about it in the book. He, was unfaithful. My parents got divorced, but he was humbled, and he became a very gentle person. My uncle was the same way and went through the same thing. And so I saw that, like, I have the potential for this. Like, I think Christians, we get, even like I've seen pastors and missionaries, it's like we need to go save the lost, whether or not we have to trample over people. And I don't think that that's how God wants us to do it. I think that as you're building, it is like your testimony and your reputation is just as important as the things that you accomplish. And I mean, one of the things that I learned I'm 34, so I've really been doing this for about 12, 13 years, like, full time, is that the people who have made it the longest, they have very few bad things that are said about them. They're actually just, in like some of the greatest pastors that have made it the longest, and like the ones that I respect the most, they're consistent. They know where their goal is, and they're going towards it. They're going towards it, even in moments of doubt, even in moments of frustration. And when they trip up, they ask for forgiveness, and they repent, and they ask for reconciliation. And so, that's the story of my dad.
Yeah.
My dad is the director of the largest rescue mission in the United States. It's in Los Angeles, and they help thousands and thousands of people daily. And, you can look at him, and there was a moment in time where you could call him a failure, but he picked himself up. He asked for forgiveness. He went through a process of repentance, and then he worked hard for 2 decades. And God has been faithful. And so, I think that is one of the things that was very clear to me at that moment. Was I yelled at Adrian in front of people, and I had to ask him for forgiveness that night. I had to ask him for permission to put it in the book.
Sure.
And he was like, "You make me look dumb." I'm like, "You don't look dumb. You look very happy, and I look like a jerk." And, but he gave me permission. He actually still works with me.
Oh, wow.
Like, we stopped working together during COVID, like, had a big falling out. He was very upset. And then I called him one day. I was like, "Hey man, I need you." And he really appreciated me saying, "I need you." It was a moment where I was like, "You've helped me build this career, and I can't do it without you." And so I think that it's, for people, like, you don't want to get to the end of your life. Jordan Peterson talks about, like, having kids, and he one of his big reasons for having kids is like, what are you going to do when you're 70? Wow. And that's like it kind of hit me hard, because I was like, there are people that travel, and like, they're probably, there's like, there's nights where I'm like, I would just like to have sleep, and I don't know what would I be happy without kids? I don't know. But I think, his point is that you don't want to get to the end and be alone. And so, like, I don't want to get to the end of my career. I don't want to get to the end of my life. I don't want to get to the end of the race and be alone, because I look back, I'm like such good friends with Paul, with Pablo, who was on the ride. I still talk to Essence and Nathan. I still talk to Alex and Alice. Like, we're a unit, and that brings so much fulfillment to my life. And so for these Christian leaders, I would say, maybe take a look at, like, who are the important people that you need to make sure, like, as I said, some people need to move on.
Yeah.
My band, I'm really good friends with one of the 3 guys. Like, the other guys kind of moved on, and we talk. I mean, we can talk, but one of the guys I still call all the time. And it's okay. Like, God has a plan for their lives, and I'm not necessarily in it all the time. But I definitely learned that as a leader, I need to humble myself, and my testimony of how I treat people is as or more important than what I do.
One of the things that you write about in the book is that there was a pretty epic crash. And if I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of that story and how it reminded you about how Jesus pursues us, even in the midst of like the scariest moments.
Yeah. So Alice is a Venezuelan Paralympic athlete, and she does not have a knee on her right side. So he was the other Paralympic athlete. He does, and he has a prosthetic that he's able to use his hamstring to push and go uphill.
Which, by the way, they both cold called you into getting onto this group, right?
I cold
called them, but then one of them said, "Can I bring my riding partner?"
Yeah, so I found Alice on Instagram, and Alex wasn't really like an influencer. And I said, "Hey, Alice, would you come?" And she's like, "I don't know who you are." And I keep like, "Hey, like I need other riders. Like I can't just do this all with Americans." Like, and she was like, "All right, well, I can ask my coach and if I can get some time off. And then would you be okay if I brought my cycling partner?" And I'm like, I don't want to pay for somebody else, but I was like, I guess like it would be weird to just,
sure,
you don't know anybody, so sure. And Alex ended up being just an incredible human being, and they ended up getting he proposed on the ride. So I didn't even know they were dating. And no, it was amazing. Which like they were not believers, and they really met Jesus on the ride. So there was some incredible stuff that I would love to share. But so Paul, one of my best friends, he is pushing Alice up the hill. This where there's some rolling hills. I was like the least experienced cyclist, so I was like, guys, I'm going to hit somebody if I do that. And we had these like wind gusts that were like, I thought that the hardest thing on the bike ride was going to be going uphill. It was actually the wind. Like the wind trying to cycle against the wind is impossible. It is terrible. And I don't know how these people are just like, they're just way stronger than me. They can just like bust through it. But I was really struggling. Alice was really struggling. And so Paul is pushing her, and the wind is coming from the side, and it ends up, and I'm like right behind them, like a few feet. And I'm like, they're getting really close. Like I'm about to say something, and boom, they're what am I trying to say?
Steering wheel? Tires.
Steering wheel, yeah. Like hit each other. They lock up, and they flip up into the air like 7 feet.
That's insane.
And so I see them just like, it was like slow motion, and they hit the ground. I'm the first one off my bike. I run over to them, and handlebars, what I was trying to say. And I run over to them, and Paul is like, he's out. Like he's knocked out. And then Alice is like kind of like moaning and like in pain. And then like Paul wakes up after a few seconds, and like then Alice is like kind of knocked out, and then everybody else is there. We're in the middle of a road in Argentina. So this is the main highway from Chile to Argentina to Mendoza. We're 30 miles outside of Mendoza. So we've already gone a few hundred miles on our bikes. And I'm like, I see blood all over Paul, and I'm like, I think I might have killed my best friend. And like, I don't know how am I going to live with that? Like, what am I supposed to do? Call his mom? And like, oh my gosh. And so I'm freaking out. I'm weeping, and he like wakes up, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But Paul keeps asking me what happened. And I explain it to him, and he goes, what happened? Where am I? And like, I'm like, oh no. Like, so it was actually amazing that my sister was there. She's a neurocritical care doctor. She was not with us at the time, but she went to the hospital with them, and he had a concussion. Alice broke her hip, and it was a minor fracture. It was not like a major break, and there was not much they could do. They couldn't put her in a cast. She just kind of had to deal with it. And I was like, hey, look, we can take you back to Chile. We can take you somewhere else. Like, you want to go home? Like, what do you want to do? And she's like, don't send me back to Venezuela. And so, side note, they ended up, her and Alex stayed in Argentina, which was a pretty scary thing for me, because like I was the first person to ever take them outside of Venezuela, and they were like, we're going to stay. And I'm like, I'm not responsible for this, right? But they've made a life. And there was 7 million Venezuelans that fled country during that time. And so they knew people and they were able to get on their feet, no pun intended, because they had prosthetics. But yeah, it was crazy because, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say like in that moment I felt like God was pursuing us. I felt like, or Jesus was pursuing us. I felt like he was providing, like at the hospital, like they were okay. I think that is a miracle. But, not to give away like everything, but that was a moment afterwards that we were working with a nonprofit and they ended up just kind of ghosting us. And so we had money that we were raising at the concerts and everything. And I had this like insight into how difficult Alex and Alice's lives are. And so we ended up like shifting gears and helping them get prosthetic legs, which was a huge, I mean, it's something that like, I think that was I think if you want to talk about pursuit, like Jesus pursuing someone, it was like, I mean, definitely he's pursuing me. He's pursuing you. But I saw him pursue Alex and Alice.
Wow.
Like, I mean, I'm trying to think back to the book and like some of the things I write about. Like, I gave Alex an iPhone. Okay, so I mean, if you want to hear about the prosthetic, you got to read the book because that is the highlight of everything. I don't want to give it away.
Sure.
I gave Alex an iPhone, and it was like I had an iPhone. I don't know, let's say 12, right? This is 2017. I don't know which one it was. 10, iPhone 10. I had an iPhone 9 or 8 that was just like my backup, and I gave Alex this just because he didn't even have a phone that he could go and call his parents, call his family. And so when I'm giving him this phone and I'm like, hey, is it like on behalf of the team, we love you. We want you to be able to talk to your family. He's like holding it up, shouting for joy. And he's like, I never thought I would have an iPhone.
Wow.
And like, you probably don't have like a real context for what Venezuela is like in this moment. But like, think Zimbabwe, like 1,000,000% inflation. Think like post Great Depression Germany.
Yeah.
Like you have a sack of money and the bag is worth more than the money.
That's insane.
Like you have to go spend the money immediately because it loses value before you can even get to stores sometimes. And so there is no hope of actually achieving or doing anything in your life unless you leave the country.
Yeah.
And so people get stuck there. They cannot leave. They don't know what to do with themselves. And like I gave him something that he thought I will never have. And I said, hey, this is just, he asked me why. And I said, hey, it's because, I believe God is a good father. And I don't know why he brought you on this trip, man. Like you were the tag along to Alice and but apparently God wanted you on this. And so here it is. We want you to be able to listen to music. We want you to be able to call your family. We'll get you a SIM card, whatever you need. And he says, what do you mean God is a good father? He says, I didn't even know my dad. He left when I was 3. He has 17 kids with multiple women, and he's never given me anything.
Wow. And
so that to me, man, like just, it broke my heart. But at the same time, I could see that God was like, he was saying to Alex, like, hey, you have this damaged image of who I am because you're seeing it through your earthly father's like lens. And, so like restoring that relationship and like allowing someone to see, hey, and I think when you said like calling, like I felt that was the right thing to do. It was like, hey, I don't need to have all of these things. Where sometimes like living in America, I feel like I need to have a bigger house. I need to have a cooler car. I need to have this thing. And it's like when I get into my calling and when and my eyes are focused on Jesus. And that is this constant struggle for me in my own life because it was easier. It's easy when you're in Cuba.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, I don't need all this stuff. Like, look, nobody has it. It's easy when you're on a bike ride and you see that, oh my gosh, I have 2 and you have none. Like, let me be generous. But it's hard when it's like everyone has more than you. Or you think so, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not putting yourself into situations where like, like part of the book is, I talked about a song I wrote called Comfort Zone. When you're not putting yourself into situations that are uncomfortable, that are outside of your norm, where you go, oh my, like, hey, I come from a very different context. And it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or if you are like working at Starbucks or cleaning your janitor, whatever it is, like there are people who are worse off than you. And so having this, like opening your eyes to see, hey, I have something to give. I think that's the point. It's not about how much you have. It's that you are branded. You have the fingerprint of God on you. And so de facto, you have something to give to someone else. And so being aware of that and being cognizant, like that is discernment. It's not like, let me pray about this for 3 hours. It's, hey, like I see that there is a need and I want to, like, I'm going to stand in the middle right now. Like it is the will of God to be generous. It is the will of God to be kind. It is the will of God to like reach out to the broken. And so when I met someone who was going through such pain, it wasn't this like, wow, Evan, you're such a deep thinker and you're so discerning. It was like, I would hope that everybody would do
just
this.
the next right thing, right?
Yeah. But you have to put yourself in those situations.
Sure.
Because it's easy when you're there. It's just really hard to put yourself there.
That's good. Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I'm going to invite you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, except I get to name the season of life that you're in. I want to take you back to the day before the concert in August, before you had this stark realization that maybe life was a little too comfortable. If you could sit down with that younger version of you, the 2017 version of you, sit knee to knee with him, hold his hands and look him in the eye and give him one piece of advice, just one piece about the journey he's going to go on, what would you tell him?
I think I would go straight back to like the only thing I regret is how I talked to Adrian. Like that is the only thing I can think of in this entire, like, who cares if you lose money? Who cares if like this is a failure or this happens? Like the only thing that cost me like for a time and has been like a pain was humiliating someone I love. And so I go back to that, like I would sit and I would look myself in the eye and I would say, do you love Adrian? Yes. Obviously. Then give him dignity, like in every moment. And if you're mad, like you're like, like you can solve these things.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think that, no matter looking back on that and looking forward, our words can wound deeper than almost anything else.
Amen. Yeah.
And so I look back at like, there's some leaders in my life that have said horrific things to me that I'm like, I will never say that to anybody else.
Yeah.
I also am grateful for, this shield of maturity because I had to mature early on when I would hear these things and I'd be like, that doesn't sound like Jesus. So like realizing, hey, that's someone else's brokenness and that has nothing to do with me. If you don't like what what God has put in my heart, like that's okay. But I think that for anyone who's a type A go-getter, you're trying to move fast, like I think Mark Zuckerberg, he says like, for Facebook, move fast and break things. It's like, that's totally fine when it's breaking systems.
Yeah.
When it's
don't break people.
Yeah. Like again, like, I mean, I had a leader tell me like, we don't want to get to the end of the finish line and look back and see a bloody mess that, along the way. And then that person did that. And I'm like, okay, well, if we don't want to see that, then let's not do it. Like that's a decision we have to make daily. And so, like even like in marriage, right? Like I don't always agree with my wife. And I realize that my words are so powerful. I am a father. My daughter bit me yesterday so hard.
Oh.
And you know what? Like I got really mad. And I have to like tell myself, okay, yelling at your daughter is not going to help. But like you win when you stay calm. And so that's really hard. And so maybe Adrian helped me learn that lesson.
Wait until they become teenagers, bro. I'm telling you.
Oh, I bet. Adrian and I talk like we're really good friends still, and I told him, I'm like, man, these little girls might kill me, but I think he would say, hey, I'll happily take that bullet again for them because he loves them.
Sure.
But he should never have to take that.
Yeah, amen.
Like you should never have to. I learned in seminary that when you think of like, sorry, I just want to end with this, is that God uses all things for the good of those who love him, can be weaponized. And so it is not a good thing that I yelled at Adrian, and God does not use that. He does not use evil, is the point. In that moment, my wickedness came out. And so it is not better that I teach my daughter, hey, this is hot, don't touch it, by burning her hand, than just telling her, hey, don't do that, and her learning that. And so the will of God, I mean, Jesus said, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That to me says that the will of God is not always done on earth.
Yeah.
And so the best thing that can happen is that we learn a lesson before having to make the mistake. And that's wisdom.
Yep.
Right? But unfortunately, at least fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So at least I want to learn from my first mistake, but it's better to not have made that. And that's what I would say.
Amen. Evan, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today and for your heart. And we're just going to pray alongside you for this work and what it's going to do in the world.
Awesome.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 3 and 5, 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. Number 1, success without purpose always feels empty. Evan kind of reminds us that achievements, even big ones like playing to sold out concerts, don't satisfy if they aren't tied to God's calling, right? Take some time this week to ask, is what I'm pursuing aligned with what God has asked me to do? So that's number 1. Success without purpose always feels empty. Number 2, generosity in service unlocks spiritual growth. You know this. Serving others shifts your focus from pressure to purpose, right? Look for one intentional way just this week to practice generosity or service. This is one of the fastest ways to kind of realign your heart, shift yourself, and gain new perspective. Number 3, interruptions might be God's direction. Man, I don't know about you, but I love to make plans. And sometimes when our plans are delayed or disrupted or paused, I have a tendency to push even harder. But I think Evan teaches us, and more importantly, God teaches us that we need to treat unexpected interruptions as possible invitations from God to slow down or pivot, or maybe even just listen more closely to who he is. All right, let's revisit the 3 and 5. They're really important. Number 1, success without purpose always feels empty. Number 2, generosity and service unlocks spiritual growth. And number 3, interruptions might be God's direction. Interruptions might be God's direction. Loved this conversation with Evan. Be sure to pick up a copy of his book, The Extra Mile. And hey, don't forget to sign up for our email list so you can start getting those PDFs. They'll be coming out very soon. I'm so excited for this project. I know you're going to love it. Until next week, thank you for being part of the Bold Ones, the community here. If there's anything I can do for you, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find at TWMilt on Instagram or Tony at TWMilt via email. Until next week, remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you got to be willing to move.